Hi, and welcome to The Working Songwriter, the show where today's best songwriters come to talk shop. I'm your host, Joe Pug. Each episode here, we host a distinguished guest, and we ask them to go deep on their inspiration, on their process, on the general ups and downs of making a life in music. So, whether you're a grizzled veteran trying to fit back into the spandex tights that you wore in your 1985 arena tour, or else a scrappy upstart trying to purchase an ironic t-shirt from that tour at Urban Outfitters, this is your show. Because ultimately, it is what every writer seeks most, an ironclad excuse to put off actually writing. Hey guys, it's the first Friday of February 2021, and I thank you for joining us. This week's show is brought to you by Bandzoogle. Built by musicians and for musicians, Bandzoogle is an all-in-one platform to build a beautiful website for your music. I'm old enough to remember when you had to pay somebody called a web developer to get a website made, and it would always be some guy named Sasha who drove a Honda Civic with scissor doors that opened vertically like a Lamborghini, and who always tried to sell you CBD oil that he had packaged in 5 Alive cartons. And old Sasha would charge you about $1,000 for a website that would be obsolete in 6 months. But it's the future now, you guys. That's not how it works anymore. We're allowed to have nice things now. One of those nice things is Bandzoogle. Bandzoogle powers the websites of tens of thousands of musicians around the world, from weekend warriors to Grammy winners. Everything that you need for a professional website is already built in. Hosting and a custom domain name, dozens of fully customizable design templates, the ability to sell your merch commission-free, mailing list tools, social media integrations. It's a wonderful product. The Working Songwriter podcast listeners can go to bandzoogle.com to try it for free for 30 days. Just use the promo code TWS to get 15% off the first year of any subscription. If you'd like to hear some of my music live in the coming weeks, every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, I'm over on my YouTube channel for Sunday Songs. That's a live stream. I'm live. I'm playing tunes. I'm taking questions in the live chat. I'm taking requests in the live chat. It's really fun. It's a really interactive experience. I'd like to say that we're building something of a little community over there on Sunday nights, including many people who are listeners to this podcast. So come on over and be a part of it. Every Sunday night, 9 p.m. Eastern on YouTube. Head over to YouTube, search for Joe Pug, or go to joepugmusic.com and click on the live stream tab. Finally, if you enjoy this podcast, if you'd like to help it remain a viable endeavor for me, here's a couple things that you could do to help. First, you could become a supporter of the show over at Patreon. Patreon is a platform that allows you to directly support creative endeavors that you find meaningful. You just head to their site, Patreon. You search for The Working Songwriter, or you search for my name, and then you sign up to kick in a few bucks every month for the show. Think of it as a voluntary subscription, a subscription that you don't have to pay, but that you just choose to pay because you dig the show, and you won't miss a few bucks at the end of the month. If just 1% of our listenership would kick in the price of a cup of coffee every month, it would make a huge difference. So thank you to everybody who's already done that. If you're not in a place where you can kick in financially, I totally get that. I've been there before. We'll still be here for you. You could still help out the show, though, by either leaving us a rating in the iTunes store or by telling a friend about the show, spreading the word. Both of those things are free. The simple math on those two things is that they will help me much more than they will be a pain in the ass for you. Okay, I'll end all the harassment there. I love Hayes Carll, and I love his music, and this was a pleasure to catch up with him. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Our guest this week is Hayes Carll. Born in the Woodlands, Texas, just a half hour north of Houston, he arrived at music a little later than some, not picking up a guitar until age 15. The first album he ever owned was a Kenny Rogers Greatest Hits, but it didn't take him long to discover Bob Dylan. And with all due respect to the gambler, I think we're all the richer for it. After a few collegiate years in Arkansas, he moved to Crystal Beach, Texas, and he began playing roughneck bars. That is a baptism by fire if I've ever heard one. He remembers the sign in front of one of those gigs reading, "All you can eat fried chicken and Hayes Carll, $4.99. In 2002, he released his debut album, Flowers and Liquor, which earned him one of his earliest and dearest champions, the late, great Guy Clark. The two would later go on to write together for Hayes' sophomore album. After some regional success in Texas, Universal's Lost Highway imprint signed him and shepherded him onto the national stage with two of his most successful albums, Trouble in Mind and K-Mag Yo-Yo. He's appeared on Austin City Limits and The Tonight Show. He's been nominated for and has won a whole slew of Americana Music awards over the years, and recently, Leanne Womack's rendition of his song Chances Are earned him a Grammy nomination for Best Country Song. The New York Times declared him an heir to outlaw country royalty like Waylon Jennings, Willie Nelson, and Ray Wiley Hubbard. Ken Tucker of NPR once rightfully warned, "Never underestimate the guys with sleepy eyes and heartache in their voices. They're sometimes the guys that really get you where you live." Hayes now hosts a weekly live stream show Tuesday nights entitled Alone Together over on his YouTube channel, and he and I caught up on the phone just a few weeks ago. Hayes Carll, thanks so much for being back on The Working Songwriter. A lot of water's gone under the bridge since we last talked. You ended up moving to Nashville. How has the move been, and what's the city like these days?
It's been good. I've been coming to Nashville since '02, I guess, so it kind of always felt like a second home as far as a lot of friends here and a lot of folks that I worked with in one capacity or another. So I like it. We had some killer picking parties early on, in a town full of songwriters and musicians. You can get together a pretty good crew. But of course those aren't happening anymore. So these days, yeah, I just kind of, I'm pretty homebound. And which is fine by me. I've got everything I need, fortunately, here to do my thing. But I'm looking forward to getting back to being able to have friends over and people over to write and play music again.
Man, those picking parties are old school. It makes me think of like a different era of Nashville, but it sounds like at least pre-COVID, they were still going on.
Well, it's funny. My wife lived here for I think 15 years before she did a long stint in New York. And like I said, I've been coming here forever, and I think we both just kind of assumed that was still a thing. But most people that came over all seemed very pleasantly surprised that we were doing this, because it doesn't seem to be a thing anymore, or at least not like it used to be. And I had this very romanticized idea in my head of Nashville in the 70s, and I guess we were trying to recreate that. I don't know if we're trying to recreate anything. We were just trying to have fun with our friends and play music. It's just something we love to do. And we were living in New York City for a little while before that, where you can't really have a proper picking party in your 2-bedroom apartment.
Right.
And so I don't know how common it is anymore, but it's something we love doing. Throw some food on the stove and just have friends come over and play music and have a great time and celebrate together.
It's something that I remember doing in my early 20s a lot in Chicago, and even when I would go through Nashville to play sometimes. And I think one of the really cool parts about a pick-and party like that is it's not exactly a competition, but it really does make you want to maybe finish a song that you weren't going to finish all the way. It really makes you want to put your best foot forward when you have to put it in front of your peers.
Yeah. It's, yeah, absolutely. I was just thinking, if Rodney Crowell or, I don't know, whoever it is watching you, you don't want to throw out a bad one. And even if you're doing a cover, which you need sometimes at a picking party, is somebody that can just throw out a song everybody knows, so everybody can play. Because I'm talking, we had 60, 70 people, and a lot of just great musicians who are just going to play guitar or piano on while somebody else is singing. So it's good to have all the different bases covered. And some people have that personality of, I'll throw something out, and a lot of people are, wallflowers even in our business, and can be shy about it. So it's good to have a couple of people with healthy egos in there to really get it going. But what's interesting to me about those things is, I think in the past, that's how songs used to get cut in large part, was songwriters would get together, somebody would play something great, and everybody would go home saying, oh, I'm going to record that, or take it to the, another artist. And artists and writers were hanging out together, and in a lot of cases were separate entities. Everybody's a singer-songwriter now. I think in the past there were people who were just songwriters, and people who were just artists, performers. So anyway, I feel like a lot of those songs got cut that way, because you hear them at a party, and I know a lot of the songs that I've recorded in my career, I haven't done a ton of covers, but the few that I have been mostly by friends or played to me by friends. And so I think that's a cool way to get music out to other people.
So if songs aren't really being cut that way anymore, how do they get cut? Has it just become more of a business than it used to be, or are you really in on that end of it these days?
I'm in on it a little bit, and more than I was earlier in my career. But I'm not exactly an expert, but from what I hear, what people tell me, and from what I've seen, yeah, it's I think people realize that that's where the money's at, where the songwriting's where the money's at. I don't know if you knew that, Joe, but that's where the big bucks are. Just the most record deals are so kind of onerous that it's hard to make money off a record, no matter how good the terms are. If you don't own it, you're probably not going to get paid on it, unless you just do incredible business. But the song, you don't have to recoup on the song if somebody cuts your song. Right. And so I think a lot of people got hip to that. So it's kind of like the Elvis thing, his name's on some credits, I believe, that he probably didn't have anything to do with, but, he had some leverage. If you wanted Elvis to record your song, you probably gave him a piece of it. And I'm not sure that happens. It probably does these days, but I have no idea to what extent. But I do think a lot of the artists coming up, are getting in those rooms with the 2, 3, 4 other people. I don't know I haven't been in that situation. Again, I'm just sort of, repeating what I've heard. But I think a lot of the artists get in there, and get their name on it one way or another, because there's a lot of value in having your name on the, owning part of that publishing and having your name on the credits.
Got it. That makes sense. You were mentioning that there were a lot of good, not only songwriters, but just great musicians in Nashville. I think you've always known that, because so many of your records have been recorded in Nashville. Have almost all of your records been recorded in Nashville since Trouble in Mind?
Let's see. My first one I did at Pedernales at Willie Nelson's studio in Texas. And then my second one I did here in Nashville, at the now defunct and wonderfully named Hum Depot. And my third one was here in Nashville. My fourth one was in Austin. Okay. And my fifth one was in Los Angeles. And my sixth one was here in Nashville.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, I did the first record that I ever did in Nashville was my last one, and I just absolutely couldn't believe the level of musicianship of people who were just hanging out around town and coming into play. It's unlike anywhere else I've ever been.
Yeah, it's pretty absurd. We've had during this pandemic, we've had some work done on the house, and it's one of those towns where the guy who's fixing your toilet is probably one of the best guitar players you've ever met, and that kind of thing. A lot of people have that second gig, but I think I lived in Austin for 12 years, which is an incredible music town and has a ton of talent, but I just think per capita, the number of songwriters and pickers, there's more opportunity, I think, to make a living at it on all parts of the business here in Nashville, because the business is here in Nashville, where it's not so much in Austin. It's more about playing. And so I think pound for pound, there's more people here than anywhere else, because they flock here to make a living.
Yeah, and when I got started 10 or 15 years ago, there was a fair amount of talent in New York and Los Angeles as well. Of course, there is still some of it there, but I feel like a lot of stuff from a lot of people who are really talented from the coasts, New York and Los Angeles, a lot of them have ended up in Nashville in the last 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I think there's a ton of them. And I'm sure there's a lot of talent in New York and LA. I guess I've always just felt like, for a good part of my life, those places felt like so impossibly remote. I never envisioned living there. And it just felt different. Like, to me, Nashville is it's a good sized city. Austin is a good sized city, but they feel manageable to me in a way that Nashville and New York always just felt like a different planet in some way.
You mean
I don't know
Los Angeles
what
and
that
New
is
York?
exactly, but yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Los Angeles and New York always felt I don't know. It's just Nashville feels like a small town, and you go out to the bar and you're going to see a bunch of people and it just feels like a smaller community to me. But
yeah. I like the town a lot. If I had different set of life expectations or responsibilities right now, I think I'd probably be there myself, just because it's a living, breathing thing right now. It seems like a really fun place to be. Every time I go through there, I always have a damn blast. I mean, it's that town's in a really good place right now.
Yeah. It's there's a lot going on, and I'm enjoying being here. It's for this point in my life, it's right where I want to be.
You and I have been talking a lot about recently. We've been talking about how we're making little changes to the paradigm of our business. Can you talk a little bit about what COVID has meant for you and how it's kind of changed the North Star that you're navigating towards business-wise?
Yeah, well, I can talk about it. I'm still trying to figure it out. So it's an interesting time in a lot of ways. I have been a performing and touring singer-songwriter for close to 20 years now, and that's the bulk of my income has come from those live performances. I've had a few little things here or there that have provided other income, but that's how I've made my living. And and I loved that for a really long time. That was when I started this. That was my dream. It was all I wanted to do, was travel the country, meet people, have life experience, uh, be in the spotlight, leave some kind of mark, and have a great time.
Yeah.
That to me was my dream. And and I remember at one there's some photo book out there floating around somewhere where they take your picture with a bunch of other musicians, and you have a quote that they put in there. And I saw one recently from years ago, and I said something to the effect of, I had a dream and it came true, and that's all I can ask for this time around. And I just sort of punched myself in the face. But at that time, I probably felt like that was true. Like, how incredibly lucky that I've gotten to do this. I've gotten to run around the world singing songs, making up songs and singing them for people, and I got paid, and people, said nice things about me for the most part. But as life changes, your circumstances change, and your goals and priorities change, and it happens for everybody in different ways at different times. I spent one of my kind of regrets is that I spent a lot of time without stopping to notice if I was changing or not. Like, I knew that quote felt outdated and silly to me, but I didn't stop to think why and what I was going to do about it. And this pandemic, this sort of halt to the way things were, has given me a really good chance to get in touch with that and think about it. And I'm, as I said, I'm still figuring it out. It's a daily process, but I have the time to think about. This has been a forcing mechanism to think about, or it's been the opportunity to think about what I want of my life, what the relationship with the work is, and the songwriting, the performing, the recording, and where I want to go with it. And it's been a forcing mechanism in the meantime, to figure out how to make a living without doing the thing that I've done all this time. And both of those have been really interesting kind of explorations, and I'm grateful to have had them, because life was kind of just going by, and I needed to stop and take stock of the whole thing.
Yeah, it's funny. I think a lot of us whose main source of revenue was the road, I think what we're all starting to learn is, that old expression, if your only tool is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. And that was, when you talk to your manager or agent or whoever was on the phone with you every week or every month, it would always be like, well, let's talk to our booking agent and find out where the shows are to get, we need revenue, let's do this. And it was always looked through the lens of where the show is going to be. Who are we going to tour with? Are we going to support? Are we going to have people support us? What do the budgets look like? And it's made me step back and be like, actually, the question is not like, where the show is going to be and how much money can they make us. The question is more, what do we want to do creatively here, and how can we subsidize that financially, basically?
Exactly. Which is, it seems like common sense, but it took us all a pandemic to kind of figure that out, or for a lot of us. I mean, some people maybe had that point of view already, or the ability to look at that and approach their careers that way. I was not necessarily one of them. I mean, I had this sort of gnawing thing in my mind going, this doesn't feel right. I'm burned out. I don't feel connected to my work. Creatively, I'm in a weird place. I don't know what I'm doing. I think I'm doing some of this for the wrong reasons. And that's not to say like it was all that way, but I did not feel like my life was aligned. My work and my life were aligned in the way that I wanted them to be. And and now this is, it's providing an opportunity to say, yes, the first priority is not, whatever festival might be able to do, or whatever kind of tour might be able to like get us some exposure or some money or whatever, these, things that seem so important for so long. Now right now I feel more like, what kind of work am I creating? Am I proud of it? What do I want to do with it? What's my comfort level with how I engage with the world, how I put it out there? It just feels like a real luxury to be able to have the time to think about that stuff for once, instead of just get in the van and go and do the same thing, Groundhog Day,
Yep.
Day after day, year after year.
Yeah, I obviously I don't think I'm going to stop touring altogether once the pandemic ends and once the vaccines are here. But, one thing I was telling my family recently was, the need to tour just for subsistence money, I think that's going to be gone. I can remember like 2 years ago, we had kind of like a dry spell in between albums, and this gig came up in rural Georgia, and it was one of these first-year festivals. And as I'm sure you know, first-year festivals always have, huge problems. And so to get you to come do them, they have to pay you a decent sum of money to come do it. And so it was this thing, and it wasn't like change your world type of money, but it was, it was some scratch. And I was going to go down there and play it. And I knew in advance that there would literally be nobody there. And that all I was doing is I was going to take a day to drive to rural Georgia, pick up a check, and then take a day to drive back. Which, look, I'm not complaining. You know what I mean? This isn't exactly working in a salt mine or anything like that.
Right.
But at the same time, it was 3 days away from my kids, 3 days away from my work, and all to do something that was literally just to pick up a check. Because indeed, I did play, and there were 2 people there to see me. And so I just think touring's not going to go away, but I think so many gigs like that one, where you just know what it's for, that you're just going to pick up a check, I just don't foresee a ton of those happening for me anymore after this.
Yeah. And you're right. I mean, I don't want to complain, because anybody that can make a living doing what they love,
yes,
is fortunate. And you and I are in that group for sure. And so I feel very lucky to be able to do that. But yeah, there is, when you're doing it for the money, there's just a different feeling than when you're doing it for the love and for how it works for your life. And yeah. I think we maybe look at things a little differently now, having figured out some ways to cover some of the bills, and there's also, it's giving me a chance to say, you know what, I'm okay with a little less money for more happiness in the whole deal.
Yeah.
Like I don't feel this need anymore to be a star. I don't need to. Don't even want to be.
Yeah.
What I want is to enjoy my life and create good work and feel connected to it, and find the best way to put that out into the world. And that's not necessarily always playing the thing. And I have to tell you, you're telling me about that festival experience. We've all got those stories, but I have one that just tickles me, and I didn't even get paid for it.
Oh no.
But it was just outside of, I've had a couple, I think I had 3 shows over the years, and they're all festivals that fell apart for one way or another, and I didn't end up getting paid, but, which, over almost 4,000 shows, that's a pretty good ratio. But there was this one just outside of Austin, his first-year festival, kind of Texas country thing, and it was back in those days when you could just, put anybody up there, and the folks were coming because the festivals were really successful, and we got out there, and it was outdoors on a gravel parking lot in August, just off the highway, on an asphalt parking lot, And there's a bunch of bands there. I had a bunch of friends that were on it, and we were all backstage, and we're there at noon, and there's nobody there. There's no security. There's nobody checking you in. You just drive in, and I go, this is a bad sign. If nobody's even taking tickets, right? We go. They were supposed to be inside of a rodeo arena, but the stage was too big and wouldn't fit in the rodeo arena, and so they had to set it up in this parking lot where it's 100 degrees. There's like 6 people sitting out there, and we go into the green room, and the promoter's like trying to take care of us and telling us how great everything's going to be and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, can I get a water? And he says, give me just a minute. And there's at noon, there's no water. And so anyway, we see where this is going. And within a couple hours, a few bands have played, and people are starting to demand to get paid. And they do, but at a certain point, the guy says, I'm going to go to it was Reckless Kelly or somebody, was like, we're not going on until we actually get paid.
Yeah.
Because we see where this is heading. And he said, all right, let me go to the ATM. So he goes to the ATM, and he never comes back. So he leaves his own festival and leaves us there with these, like, at this point, like 50 fans. And there's a bunch of kind of younger baby bands on the bill as well, and Reckless and me were more established, I guess, and this guy comes up to us and says, this is actually kind of awful now I think about it, but he goes, we've got his sister. And we're like, what do you mean you've got his sister? He goes, the promoter, we've got his sister, she's inside, but we're not going to let her out until he gets back. Unless he pays it, right? And this kid thought he was like, this was his chance to like impress us, as a established band, and he was like, going to help us out in this situation. And we're like, no, you can't kidnap the promoter's sister in exchange for the money that we have contracts.
We're not going to go. We're not going to commit false imprisonment here on somebody.
Yeah. And anyway, it turns out we should have held her hostage because we never got paid. The guy never showed up again. And but anyway, it's stuff like that. It's like, oh yeah, it makes a fun story, but that's not. I don't want to spend my life doing that. And it happens enough times in enough ways, big and small, where you go, okay, I'd just rather be home with my wife, So I'm with you. I still want to tour. There's nothing like being in front of an audience live and playing music and connecting on that level, but doing it in a way that's creatively fulfilling, and rather than just about the paycheck. I still get the paycheck here and there for sure. It's not. I haven't gotten to where I'm never gonna need to work for the money, but I don't know. It's been enlightening. Just figuring out how to do. Like, I'm doing live streams. I'm doing Patreon. I'm making records. I'm connecting with my audience in a way that I never had before, and I'm loving the idea that 1,000 close fans is more meaningful and sustainable than 100,000 fans who are not with you. You find that with your audience, do you feel more connected to them through all this?
I do. I had made the mistake very early on in my career and through most of it until the pandemic, thinking that people only wanted so much from you. You know what I mean? I think this is kind of like an old school mentality in that I'm just going to put out a really awesome album that I work for a really long time on once every couple of years, and then I'll tour on it, and then I'll go away, because otherwise I'm going to burn out people's attention on me. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it turns out that, at least in the modern era, or the era that we're in now, that's not at all how it works. It's the more that you're out there, the more that you're engaging with people, the more that you're publishing different content that maybe isn't even music. Maybe it's live streams, maybe it's a podcast, whatever. That is what people want to interact with. So I'd started to get the inkling that I had been wrong and needed to change my paradigm before the pandemic, and then the pandemic just pushed me straight into it completely. And I have found that, yes, I'm interacting with people a lot more, and it turns out that no, I'm not burning out their attention at all. In fact, I think it's adding fuel to what I'm doing.
Absolutely. It feels like, for me, it's like it's increasing the connection with the audience, and it's also fuel for me creatively, like, because I'm not when I'm touring, okay, I'm going out, here's the songs, here's the set. You know, I'm a fairly limited musician, so there's only so many ways I can, present these songs to you. and you know, I try and mix it up and be creative about it. But you know what I mean? Like, there's, I only know, 6 chords. So there's a limit to what I can do. But like with my Patreon, I have all these different video series where I have one just called Songs I Love, and I play a song that I love, like somebody else's song, and then I talk about it for a while.
Yeah.
And it's really turned me back on to how much I love Chris Christopherson, or getting inside of Dylan songs, or Prine or Greg Brown or whoever, these songs I'm examining that were influential to me, and were the catalyst for me being a songwriter in the first place. But they were the things that lit the fire for me, that said, that's what I'm going to do with my life. And I think I'd gotten away from that in a way, just by being out touring and grinding and playing my own songs. And so there's just a lot of different things like that I'm taking, I'm just trying to provide some sort of connection with my audience, but in turn, it's fueling my creativity and making me fall in love with music again, and with songwriting and the process of it. And it's not about how many tickets I sold at a show. That's not the metric for whether I'm succeeding. It's more, do I feel a connection to this? Am I really proud of this? Great. I worked hard on it. I'm doing it. And I've got, an audience it's not Wembley Stadium, but there's people who care. And the more I seem to give, the more I give them, like you said, the more invested and engaged they seem to be with me and my work, which is, it's pretty rewarding right now.
This week's episode is brought to you by Nation of Heat Records and my new album, The Diving Sun, to be released on March 19th, 2021. Let's take a listen to the first single, Crescent Bridge. What began as a search for songs for a B-sides album morphed into an obsessive remix and morphed again into a proper album process. This new album features songs from sessions from my album Windfall and from The Flood in Color, and also a handful of songs written and recorded during the COVID quarantine. The result is an album that's unlike any other I've ever produced, but which also stands shoulder to shoulder with any album I've ever released.
Can't admit it drives a dark car, no heart, rebel with a gold card. I'm here waiting on the Crescent Bridge, and she's a true bride, bright side, parliaments and brown eyes. I'm here waiting on the Crescent Bridge.
That's entitled Crescent Bridge from the forthcoming album, The Diving Sun. Go to joepugmusic.com to hear it in its entirety. Hayes has always gone his own way in the music business and has trusted his talent and work ethic to carry him home. He hasn't followed musical trends, the flavor of the month, or the style of the year. He has remained true to himself, and he's allowed his career to take all the twists and turns that go with that. There's a wonderful poem by Wendell Berry about that kind of iconoclasm entitled Manifesto, the Mad Farmer Liberation Front. Love the quick profit, the annual raise, vacation with pay. Want more of everything ready-made. Be afraid to know your neighbors and to die. And you will have a window in your head. Not even your future will be a mystery anymore. Your mind will be punched in a card and shut away in a little drawer. When they want you to buy something, they will call you. When they want you to die for profit, they will let you know. So, friends, every day do something that won't compute. Love the Lord, love the world, work for nothing. Take all that you have and be poor. Love someone who does not deserve it. Denounce the government and embrace the flag. Hope to live in that free republic for which it stands. Give your approval to all you cannot understand. Praise ignorance, for what man has not encountered, he has not destroyed. Ask the questions that have no answers. Invest in the millennium. Plant sequoias. Say that your main crop is the forest that you did not plant, that you will not live to harvest. Say that the leaves are harvested when they have rotted into the mold. Call that profit. Prophecy such returns. Put your faith in the 2 inches of humus that will build under the trees every 1,000 years. Listen to the carrion. Put your ears close and hear the faint chattering of the songs that are to come. Expect the end of the world. Laugh. Laughter is immeasurable. Be joyful, though you have considered all the facts. So long as women do not go cheap for power, please women more than men. Ask yourself, will this satisfy a woman satisfied to bear a child? Will this disturb the sleep of a woman near to giving birth? Go with your love to the fields. Lie easy in the shade. Rest your head in her lap. Swear allegiance to what is nighest your thoughts. As soon as the generals and the politicos can predict the motions of your mind, lose it. Leave it as a sign to mark the false trail, the way you didn't go. Be like the fox, who makes more tracks than necessary, some in the wrong direction. Practice resurrection. You mentioned something earlier that I thought was pretty interesting that I want to dig in on a little bit because I feel similarly. You mentioned, hey, I'm at a point in my career where I don't want to be, a capital S star, anymore. And I wonder if the reason for that is the same as my reason for that. I got into this racket, as I think a lot of people did, wanting to be damn Bruce Springsteen. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And now the reason that that it doesn't seem like something I want to point myself towards anymore is because I've been around the business long enough and I've gotten to get a peek at some of the heights of the business in different places. And I realize that the people who are at the very heights that are in a position like Bruce Springsteen, like Brandon Flowers of the Killers, who's a guy that I kind of got to see behind his operation, that's a shitload of responsibility. And I'm not the kind of guy that wants all that responsibility.
Yeah. It's interesting. I know what you mean. When I got into this, like I said, I wanted to travel. I wanted to see the world. I wanted to live life. I wanted to leave my mark, and also wanted to feel seen. And everybody wants to feel special in some way. The idea of being celebrated, I was not a popular kid and ever. And so it was like, well, this is, like millions of other people. I was like, well, give me a guitar or a talent, a voice, and I'll show everybody, and then everybody will think I'm great, and everything, all my problems will be solved. And again, it is fun when people give you acclaim, but it's also fleeting. And I'm also at the point where, as I've gotten older, yes, I've seen what that can be like, to the point where I'm grateful that I don't have celebrity, because while there's a lot of perks, there's also I'm not comfortable with people being that into my life in that way, or strangers thinking they know you, and that many people thinking they know you. And at the end of the day, I'm also, a big dork who's just like, I suck at keeping up social media accounts, and I'm a bad dresser, and I don't know what to do when I'm standing on stage. And, like, those are not my strengths, the things that make a star. So I'll make music, and I hope it gets a good response, and it does well. But I realized I need to be on my own terms, and it need to be me. And I felt like I was getting further away from who I am, trying to be something else. So, and to follow up on that as well, I also, when I was having a fair amount of success, as it was happening, I was enjoying it, but I realized I was never happy. I was always looking at somebody else's career. Well, they're doing better. They sell more tickets. They sell more records, et cetera, et cetera. And then I had friends who were not nearly as their careers were not as successful as mine was, and they were way happier. And it was gnawing at me for years, and I just kept thinking, I'm doing something wrong here, because this guy over here sells 10 tickets to a show, and he's writing songs every day. He's doing the work. He's happy. It's good work, and I'm sure he would like some parts of my career, but he's not letting that bring him down. And I was letting some of that stuff bring me down. And I kept hearing that quote from Ray Wiley Hubbard, which you probably heard. It says that the days I keep my gratitude higher than my expectations are good days. And it's so simple, but that it just stuck with me. And I finally started thinking about it and learning to become grateful for what I had, instead of desirous of what I didn't. And it's made a huge difference.
Yeah, that, like you said, that acclaim is really fleeting. And when you're in that position, when things are really clicking for you, maybe the reason that it's so uncomfortable is because you can kind of feel that it's fleeting, and you feel like you have something to lose. Have you ever heard, there's a Lorne Michaels quote that goes like this. He said, this is how the life of celebrity goes. It goes, who's Hayes Carll? Get me Hayes Carll. Get me a young Hayes Carll. Who's Hayes Carll? And it's such a scary roller coaster like that I think it's more fun. I've always told my wife, or maybe she's told me, I'm not quite sure who came up with this idea, but just, the career you want, that you would wish upon a star for, is the Tom Waits one, where you're just, your songs are known the world over, but you get to do exactly what you want. You're renowned, but not too famous that you can't walk down a street. Like, that just seems like a perfect level of artistry and acclaim right there.
Yeah. And, that need for success, you mentioned fear of losing what you have. And it goes back to like the touring and stuff we were talking about. I don't know. For myself, I think there were creative chances I did not take as a songwriter, as an artist, because I needed to maintain some kind of career, and also just the fear of failure, because when you're unknown, the failure it's not as public,
Right.
and it's easier to fail. And I look back at my younger self and I say, you know what, I had some balls. I went for it in some circumstances. And, I've never like completely shut it down, but I can look back at certain points in my life and say, you know what, I was scared to push myself here. I was scared to take this left turn because the Hayes Carll franchise, I hate speaking like it's a very small franchise, but the idea was that was my livelihood and I don't want to mess with it. Which is understandable. We have to make a living and you got to take care of your kids and stuff.
Yep.
But I think what this time has reminded me is I can do that. And the best way to do that, and actually the best way to be successful on any level, is not to spend all my time trying to give people what I think they want or worry about failure, but to push myself and not to live in fear. I think that's the most interesting thing you can do, and it keeps you growing. How do you evolve and get any better if you're not taking chances? And how do you take chances if you're so scared of losing something that you're frozen, paralyzed?
And it's also a strange thing to have to aim at when you're trying to consider what people want, because there's a maxim, not in the music business, but in business in general, that people don't know what they want until you show it to them and create. No one in 2007 thought that they needed an iPhone. No one had any idea what that was, but there was a vision for this is what this could be, and we're going to show people what this is, and they're going to want this shit. You know what I mean? And I think that's not only, I wouldn't say a healthier way of going at it, but a more almost accurate way of going at it. Trying to predict what people will want is a fool's errand, whereas trying to intuit what you would want yourself and then try to deliver that for people, at least there's some sort of rubric that you're going by then, because it's something that you yourself want.
Yeah, and the reward is so much better just personally, because if you succeed on somebody else's terms, it's hard to really know what that's worth, or are you even happy? But if you succeed doing the thing that you did for you, it's okay to celebrate that.
Yes.
Or just it feels like you're in touch with that. Like, this is what I wanted to do and I did it, and people are responding to it. Great, I feel good about that. If it's I'm just gonna do this because I think people might like it and I got it right. Okay, great. But then I lose my bearing. I don't know where I am for the next time. I'm chasing their approval in a way that I'm uncomfortable with.
Yes.
And so I'd like to be my own center, and and then if it fails, fine. But I didn't compromise who I was or my own vision for somebody else's. Life's short. You got one shot at it. Do your. You read a poem. I'm obsessed with your show, by the way, and I appreciate you having me back on. But you read an episode during one of the episodes recently. I can't remember what it was, but there was a poem that you read about essentially saying that life's short and it's criminal to not just go for it on some level. Do you remember which one I'm talking about? That's a really bad paraphrasing of the poem.
I could go back. I'll have to go back and see. I'm not sure which one that was.
Well, it stuck with me recently. I mean, just the general idea of just quit worrying about anybody else's perception of your work. The only thing that makes me remotely interesting is what I'm thinking deep inside of me and what I'm capable of, not what I think somebody else thinks about it and worrying about that. So.
Yep. And
anyway,
the one caveat to that, of course, is, as you said earlier, like, hey man, I got kids, I got a mortgage. There is a month-to-month nut that I have to hit every month just to exist in the world. But now with these new sources of revenue that we found over the pandemic, what's kind of cool is it's like, all right, well, look, you're maybe not going to get rich right here, but your month-to-month is taken care of in a way. So now that that's taken care of, I think it really does free you up to pursue it in the kind of bold way that you're talking about right there.
Yeah, and I recognize that not everybody is, the same as the touring. Not everybody is has been able to sort of, find ways to make money during this time. And again, I feel really fortunate, but the live streams have worked for me. And I put a lot of effort into that, staying in touch with people, and I send out a new postcard every week to people that tip me. And at first I was like, I don't know about all this, but now I'm proud of that. Like, it's not what got on the radio, it's my connection with these people. And I looked at it like this, like I want to be the last expense they cut.
Yeah.
I'm gonna super serve them to make sure that when they're trimming the bills, they're like, well, Hayes is the last thing.
Yes.
There's food and electricity, but I want to be up there in that category, and so I work really hard to do that, and it's fun and it's rewarding, and so I feel like that's money earned. It's tips for the most part, or through Patreon, which has been a godsend. And I know you use Patreon with this podcast, and
yeah,
those are it's interesting. We're kind of bypassing the traditional gatekeepers on every level,
yes,
and just going directly to the world, and that's exciting to me and fascinating. I'm still figuring it out and kind of coming to terms with the possibilities, but and I know you talk about it with a lot of artists on your show, but I think so many people I know a lot of people are just like, this sucks and we can't do anything until we get back to work. But I know a lot of folks have said this has been actually a great, valuable opportunity to reset and rethink how I want to do things going forward, because there's a lot of possibilities.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about going the extra mile with your audience there now, and wanting to be their last expense to cut. I read an article with the legendary investor Warren Buffett, and someone had asked him just a very simple question along the lines of, basically, how do you be a successful company? And his answer was, it's not enough to satisfy your customers. You have to delight them. And I've just really been focusing on that during this pandemic, whereas before, like I said, I was focused on where are we going to do the shows, da-da-da-da-da. And now I'm trying to just focus on how to delight my audience, and then let everything else after that. If I focused on that and made those decisions, it seems like all the other decisions just they just fall into line easily after you've made that top line decision based on that rubric.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. And do you find, like, I have a show every Tuesday night, and it is very emotional for me, because I interact with my wife, and then like nobody else, like all week, and then I'm doing these shows, and even though I can't see these people, I know they're out there. I see the number of people. I see the comments, and it's cathartic and therapeutic for me. It's like, this is my time to actually commune with people and socially engage in a way. And I'm playing music and I'm trying to entertain them and I'm making them laugh but I'm crying during things. I'm cracking myself up during things, and I'm a little crazy. Like last night I did a show and I had to apologize because I was just spazzing out because it was like I'd been, cooped up all week, and here's my chance to talk to people and just freaking out. But at the end of it, like, that was an experience of all the emotions for me. Yeah. I was able to talk to people. I'm able to be real and not put on a front, but I can sit there. And if this song about my grandfather makes me cry, I cry. And you know, if something's funny to me, I can laugh. And it's just, I don't know. I feel everything just feels way more centered and connected. And I feel like that connection comes through to people. It's not, I like that term you said, you know, you got to delight them. And I'm not sure that those things I just mentioned were delighting people, but I feel like we're having an experience of some kind, and that it's not just a performance, that it's an interaction, and that is meaningful to everybody involved, hopefully on some level. And I'm really enjoying that right now.
I am too, man. Those my Sunday night shows that I'm doing, the Sunday Songs show that I'm doing, is really it saved me on a lot of levels. It's allowed me to kind of keep my identity during this pandemic, because I've been doing so much childcare with my kids that I've just basically been you know, daddy daycare, and that's awesome. I love doing it, but there's this whole other part of me that, you know, I built an identity playing music, and this has allowed me to continue that. And it's also allowed me to continue making a living. There's this thing that kicks in when you have kids, and you know what this is, but it's this instinct in you that's like, I got to go out of the cave and club something over the head and then bring the meat back to the cave for the family. And if you're not earning money, man, it just, there's no way around it. Whether it's acculturated or innate, there's a thing with guys where you really feel that. And so since I'm able to keep on making a living and not have to worry about calling someone else, oh, I wonder if I'm going to have a tour when all this is done. Are they going to forget about me? You know, like, I don't have to worry about all that. I can be a lot more, like you said, centered and calm, and just continue to do what I've always done, which is try to put songs into people's lives.
Yeah. And in a way, I work 10 times harder now in a way than I think I ever did during touring. But I have more time and more focus and more ability to do that, and I'm getting more gratification out of it. And there's something about, you know, being still, absolutely, as well, just as far as the writing part of all this goes. You know, the touring, I don't know about you, but I always struggled to write on the road. I would collect ideas on the road, but I couldn't do anything with them. I couldn't expound upon them or dig in, or, you know, figure out where they were going until I got home and got still. And there were years where I spent very little time at home or still. And so, you know, I envision myself as a songwriter, and that's how I think of myself. And the performance part was to pay the bills, something I enjoyed, but but it became the dominant thing, and the songwriting took a back seat in a way. And that's everything good that's ever happened to me came from a song I wrote. And, you know, I was starting to run out of that fuel, and then the other stuff, is affected. And so I also like this time, just because I have more time to focus on that primary thing, which is writing a song. That's the thing that's gonna hopefully last. It's the thing that's gonna open up those other opportunities. And it's the thing that I'm most excited about, is creating something. And that still makes me very happy, and is something I'm interested in and get excited about.
Well, I'm excited about it too, and I'm excited you came back on the show. Thank you, Hayes. It's so good to hear your voice, and thanks for chatting with me for our listeners.
Well, Joe, I appreciate you, man. Your this podcast and your shows have been a godsend, a lifesaver for me, and so I appreciate your friendship.
Same here, brother. I'll talk to you soon, man. Thank you.
All right. Adios.
This week's show is brought to you by Bandzoogle. Built by musicians and for musicians, Bandzoogle is an all-in-one platform to build a beautiful website for your music. Use promo code TWS, the initials of our podcast, TWS, to get 15% off the first year of any subscription. Hayes Carll's latest album is the Alone Together Sessions, available everywhere music is sold or streamed, and his live stream show is every Tuesday night on his YouTube channel, so go check that out. If before we meet again you sit down to write, please remember, an expensive drug habit is not a song, a compelling Instagram account is not a song, and most importantly, reverb is not a song. So let all that take care of itself, and for you, just keep your eye on the song.